Hello everyone! In today's video, we will be talking about the human rights, more specifically about the human rights during and after the Cold War. How did the people were treated and if they were respected or not? But before we get into the main topic, we need to do a brief introduction of what was the Cold War so we can have a more deep understanding about the topic. The Cold War was a period of ideological tension and geopolitical maneuvering spanning roughly 1947 to 1991 that casted a long shadow over the world, ignited by the starkly contrasting ideologies of the United States and the Soviet Union. In the aftermath of World War II, this conflict wasn't a direct war between the superpowers themselves, but rather a global struggle for influence fought through proxy wars, espionage, and nuclear brinkmanship. While the Cold War reshaped the geopolitical landscape, its most enduring impact was on the life of ordinary people caught in the crossfire. Today, we're going to explain what the consequence of the Cold War was. For example, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, toppled up fundamental freedoms and left legacy of scars of societies. The ideological divide between the US, searching for democracy and capitalism, and the Soviet Union, promoting communism and a centralized state, both superpowers impatient to contain the other's influence, readily backed authoritarian regimens that aligned with their interests, turning the blind eye to human rights abuses as long as they served the broader cause. This support for dictatorships directly fueled human rights violations. Regiments in Eastern Europe, for instance, rarely suppressed dissent and basic freedoms to maintain their grip on power.
One example of the situation in which the human rights weren't respected is the Korean War. The division of Korea along ideological lines led to a bloody war that devastated the peninsula. Both sides, North Korea, backed by the Soviet Union and China, and South Korea, supported by the US and UN forces, committed atrocities against civilians. North Korea, totalitarian regime, employed forced labor camps and public executions to silence dissent, while the US-backed South Korea government suppressed leftist movements with violence.
Another one is the Vietnam War, a brutal war which led to widespread civilian casualties, the both sides resorting to tactics like carpet bombing and chemical weapons. The Soviet-Vietnamese government, propped up by the US, implement policies that restrict freedom of speech and assembly. Meanwhile, the Viet Cong guerrilla movement employed tactics like torture and intimidation to control the population.
These wars were far from only instances where the Cold War trampled human rights. In Latin America, for example, the US support for the right-wing dictatorships that led the suppression of leftist movements, often resulting in torture, disappearances, and mass killings. The Cold War also had a chilling effect on the freedom of expression, as both sides sought to control information and silence dissent.
Transitions of democracy weren't always smooth, neither with some former Soviet states clinging to authoritarian power. These justified freedom of speech, assembly, and fair elections, hindering political participation. Economic hardship, fueled by the shift from planned economies, led to the corruption and the rise of oligarchs, widening the gap between the wealthy and struggling. Impact the right on an adequate standard of living.
The Cold War ended in 1991 brought hope for a new era of respect for human rights. The collapse of the Soviet Union and its satellite state led to democratic reforms and increased scrutiny of human rights abuse. However, the legacy of the Cold War persists. Many societies are still grappling the traumas inflicted during this period, and authoritarian regimes continue to exploit Cold War-era divisions, justifying human rights violence.
In conclusion, the Cold War had a devastating impact on the human rights of people around the globe, from the brutality of the wars like the Korean and Vietnam Wars to the support of repressive regimes. The Cold War cast a long shadow over basic freedoms, and that's a problem.
because respecting human rights and fostering democracy are crucial for building a more just, peaceful, and prosperous world. If the human rights get violated like it was done during and after the Cold War, then a lot of people will suffer just like some people did some decades ago. While the end of the Cold War ushered in a new era, the scars of this conflict continue to shape international relations and the ongoing struggle for universal human rights. The only thing we have left is to educate people about the mistakes done years ago and hope that the same mistakes not to be made again, because we should create and contribute a better future for all.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and subscribe
Give
to our
like and
channel
subscribe. Give like.
for more videos like this. Thank you.
You know.